Ibrahim Traoré is not just a man who defies orders. He shattered centuries of chains in a single night. And it all began with one phone call. At 10:15 p.m. Ouagadougou sleeps early. But that night, inside the presidential palace, a single light still burned. President Ibrahim Traoré leaned over a desk covered with plans, blueprints for schools in the north. Each pen stroke was a promise. Then it came. The red phone buzzed, sharp, urgent, final. He answered. A trembling voice. Mr. President, there are 400 children, trapped in an illegal gold mine near Campena. Starving. Digging with bare hands. Some, only 5. Traoré's hand clenched. His jaw locked. He stood. In that instant, he was not just a leader. He was a father. We bring them home. Tonight. The call ended. Silence returned to the room, but not to Traoré's heart. He pressed a hidden button on his desk. Bring me General Dallo and Commander Ouedraogo. Now. 15 minutes later, the presidential courtyard erupted into motion. Black jeeps. Armored trucks. 3 ambulances. Soldiers whispering orders. Traoré emerged, not in a suit, but in full military uniform. We march east. 400 children are waiting. No cameras. No press. Just resolve. The city slept. But justice was awake, and rolling on 6 wheels into the night. They moved like shadows through a country that had forgotten its own scars. The convoy slipped silently out of the sleeping capital. No headlights. No horns. Just the hum of engines and the heartbeat of justice pulsing through metal and men. Above them, stars blinked indifferently. Beneath them, the dust of the red road curled around tires like smoke. The deeper they drove into the east, the thicker the trees became. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. Inside the lead jeep, President Ibrahim Traoré sat stiff and silent. His military uniform creased with purpose. No aides. No speeches. Just fury, controlled, focused, silent. By 1:05 a.m., they arrived at the place whispered through the phone, a skeletal lumber mill, long abandoned, half swallowed by vines and time. It stood like the carcass of an old world. Behind it, hidden among shrubs, was a path barely wider than a man's shoulder. This is it, Traoré said. His voice didn't rise. It dropped, like a hammer. He stepped out. His boots sank into damp soil that hadn't felt justice in years. They left their vehicles and continued on foot. Flashlights cut lines through the night. The further they went, the quieter the forest became. Even the insects seemed to sense that something sacred and terrible was about to be revealed. Then, the sound reached them. At first, faint. Then undeniable. Metal on stone. Rust scraping earth. Labored breathing. Grunts. Moans. The symphony of silent suffering. They stopped. Dropped to the ground. And looked over the edge. There it was. Hell, hidden in a hole. A pit dug into the belly of the land, surrounded by steep hills, cloaked in trees. The illegal gold mine was bigger than anyone expected. Massive industrial floodlights pierced the darkness. Their glow so harsh it hurt to look at. A generator buzzed relentlessly, vibrating through the soil like a warning. But it was not the light or the machinery that broke the hearts of hardened soldiers. It was what the light revealed. Children. Hundreds of them. Tiny silhouettes moving like broken insects in the pit. Some barefoot, others in rags, many naked to the waist. Their small bodies were caked in dust and mud. Arms trembling from hours, perhaps days, of non-stop labor. Some carried buckets. Others hacked at the earth with picks too big for their hands. And many just used their fingers. One girl, no older than 6, collapsed. Her knees gave way. She dropped her load. A guard shouted. He didn't speak, he struck. A boot to the ribs. The girl curled up and didn't move. She didn't cry. She had no tears left. Traoré's hand went to his belt. Not for a weapon, but to keep it from shaking. He turned to Commander Ouedraogo. No sound. No mercy. His voice was cold iron. The strike team split, melting into the trees, crawling to their positions like wolves in grass. They'd trained for this. But this wasn't just a raid. This was rescue, or vengeance. Or both. At 2:37 a.m., a green flare shot silently into the sky. The signal. Then smoke. Flashbangs. Grenades. Fire without flame. Light without warmth. The enemy shouted, confused. Stumbling in clouds of red and gray. The guards reached for weapons, but too late. Within 4 minutes, the site was under complete control. All known threats neutralized. No fatalities. Just orders fulfilled with brutal precision. The guards were on their knees, hands zip-tied, mouths in the dirt that once made them rich. But the children, they did not move. Some flinched. Others stared. They'd learned that new men often meant new suffering. A small boy, shaking, whispered, "Please don't hurt us." And then, from the smoke, a figure emerged. A tall man in olive green, eyes full of fire, but arms raised in peace. "My name is Ibrahim Traoré," he said. His voice, for the first time that night, was soft. "I am your president. And I came to take you home." A silence, sharp as a blade, fell over the mine. Then, one girl dropped her shovel. A boy dropped to his knees, sobbing. Another whispered, "You came yourself." "Yes," Traoré said. He dropped to one knee. "Yes. And you are free now." A boy broke down completely. "They told us we would die here. They said no one would care." Traoré placed a hand on the boy's trembling shoulder. "They lied. I care. You will not die. You will live. You will grow. You will be children again." The floodlights flickered. For a moment, it looked like the world itself was crying. Children began to cry, not from pain, but from release. From disbelief. From something long buried clawing its way out. Some fainted, too weak from hunger. Others collapsed into one another's arms. Then came the medics. They ran, not with guns, but with water bottles, blankets, bread, medicine. They checked pulses. They treated infected wounds. They whispered calm into tiny ears. Each child was tagged for triage. The weakest were rushed to ambulances parked in the trees. One girl clung to Traoré's sleeve. "Don't leave us here," she whispered. "I won't." He replied, and even his voice shook. The sun, hesitant at first, began to rise. Its first light fell on the mine, not as prophet, but as proof. This was no longer a secret. No longer a crime in the shadows. The truth had arrived with boots and courage. Drones circled overhead, recording everything. Photos. Videos. Evidence. Justice. At 6:30 a.m., General Dallo approached. "All hostiles detained. The area is secure." Traoré nodded. "Good. Let the world see what they did." By 7 a.m., 400 children sat in armored trucks, wrapped in blankets, some asleep for the first time in weeks. Others stared through foggy windows, at trees, at sky, at freedom. But many stared at him. Their rescuer. Their shield. Their president. Not a man behind a podium, but the men who came into the pit and pulled them out with his own hands. When a child whispered, "Please don't hurt us," a continent held its breath. If you believe no child should ever whisper those words again, leave a comment. Share this truth. Join the voice that says, "Never again." The rescue had been swift. Surgical. But what came after would demand more than firepower, it would demand humanity. As dawn crept over the treetops, the air at the edge of the mine turned cold. Children huddled together, blinking at a world they thought they would never see again. Some were too weak to stand. Others refused to let go of the tools they had used, pickaxes, shovels, buckets, as if releasing them might summon their captors back. President Ibrahim Traoré did not give orders now. He gave comfort. He moved from child to child, kneeling, listening. One boy was missing 3 fingernails. A girl had rope marks on her wrists. Some didn't speak. Others would not stop crying. But there was no panic, only silence. The silence of survivors learning how to breathe again. Nearby, the medics worked with urgency but reverence. These were not just patients, they were sacred. Water first. Bread next. Slowly. No sudden doses, one medic whispered. Another medic wrapped a child in a thermal blanket and whispered, "You're safe now." Traoré watched one of the smallest boys, barely 4, try to drink. He couldn't. His body trembled too hard. The president crouched beside him and held the bottle. "Sip. That's it. Little sips. You're doing well." The boy looked up and tried to smile. His lips cracked from dryness. Some of the children asked if they were going to be punished. Others thought this was a trick. "You're not going back," Traoré said again and again. "No one will hurt you again." But trauma is not undone with words. So the rescue turned into something more sacred, a ritual of repair. By 8 a.m., the team had triaged 400 children. 52 were in critical condition, malnourished, feverish, or bearing untreated wounds. 12 had broken bones. 7 had lost consciousness. They were rushed into 3 waiting ambulances, their names recorded by Nurse Fatima, who whispered each one like a prayer. Binta. Musa. Fatu. Adama. She didn't cry. Not until later. In the clearing above the mine, soldiers stood watch. Guns lowered. Eyes alert. They weren't guarding gold. They were guarding dignity. Inside the command tent, Commander Ouedraogo updated Traoré on their findings. The mine was built years ago. Hidden from satellites. They used refugee children, orphans, smuggled miners. Who profited? Ouedraogo hesitated. Then handed over a list. Businessmen. Some in Burkina Faso. Others abroad. Names with bank accounts. Traoré looked at it. Folded it. Burned it. "This ends today," he said. At 8:45 a.m., the order was given, seal the mine. Permanently. Soldiers erected barricades and draped it in black tarps. Drones took final photographs. The government would release them later, as truth bombs against denial. But even as justice took root in earth, something more fragile bloomed in the eyes of the children, belief. They began to speak again. "I want shoes. Will there be food? Can I learn to read?" Each question was a door back to life. One girl asked, "Where will we sleep?" President Traoré looked at her. "With a roof over your head. A bed. And a blanket that smells like soap." The girl nodded like that was the most impossible dream. They boarded the trucks in silence. Blankets wrapped. Small hands clutching bread or tiny stuffed animals handed out by soldiers. Before departure, one boy walked back and approached Traoré. "Sir. Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I want to be like you when I grow up." The president knelt, tears swelling behind his eyes. "Then I must grow stronger. So I can protect the country, until you're ready to lead it. If you believe leadership is earned on the ground, not the podium, leave a comment. If a child saying, 'I want to be like you,' restores your faith in tomorrow, hit like. Be part of this witness." They were safe. But safety is not the end of danger. Within a week, the children were recovering in a secure shelter outside Ouagadougou, an abandoned boarding school converted into a sanctuary. The walls had been repainted. The beds were new. The sheets smelled like soap. It was the beginning of healing. But darkness does not always come with a weapon. Sometimes, it arrives holding a camera. 2 nights after the rescue, a black SUV parked outside the shelter. The guards were bribed. The visitors were dressed as foreign journalists, clean shirts, badges, gentle smiles. They brought toys. Candy. Promises. They told the children that Traoré had lied. That he was sending them back. That he wasn't their savior, but their captor. They said if the children wanted to be free, truly free, they had to speak. On camera. And they did. Because they were scared. Because trauma makes trust fragile. Small hands clutched microphones. Little mouths said what they were told. He heard us. They promised to help, but it's worse. We want to go to Europe. The footage was uploaded before sunrise. The title read, Burkina Faso's president exposed, children say they were lied to. It exploded. International outrage followed. Western media outlets replayed the clips on loop. Headlines screamed betrayal. Analysts speculated that Traoré had staged the rescue for political gain. That he had kidnapped these children himself. Donations were frozen. Aid withdrawn. Protesters gathered in front of Burkinabe embassies in Europe. Inside the shelter, the children stopped eating. They felt they had done something wrong. Some begged to be taken back to the mine, because at least there, no one expected them to speak. President Traoré watched the footage in silence. His hands didn't move. His expression didn't change. When the video ended, he stood up and simply said, "We are under attack." He called an emergency meeting. His generals. His advisors. Child psychologists. Intelligence operatives. The room buzzed with fury. How did the imposters get in? Who paid them? Was it foreign influence? Was it the mining companies? Traoré raised a hand. Silence. This is no longer about just gold, he said. This is a war for the truth. He ordered a full investigation. Within 24 hours, the guards who took the bribe were arrested. Within 48, one of the fake journalists was found trying to flee into Ghana. He carried a hard drive with footage outtakes, evidence that the children were coached. That candy had been exchanged for lies. But the damage was done. The world had seen the lie before it saw the truth. In the shelter, the children cried quietly at night. Some tried to run. Some tore up their own drawings of Traoré they had made just days before. And so, the president did the unthinkable. He returned to them. No cameras. No media. Just him. He walked into the shelter alone and sat on the floor. The children backed away at first. But slowly, they came closer. You said we were safe, one girl said, voice trembling. And you still are, he answered. But they said you lied. He shook his head. They lied to you. But, we said bad things. That's not your fault, he said softly. You didn't lie. You were tricked. And I forgive you. Silence. Then, one girl, Fatu, walked forward. Will they come again? Not if I have anything to say about it, he said, standing. The next day, the world woke to something unexpected. A press conference. But not just any conference. This time, it was the children who spoke. If you've ever seen the truth twisted until it broke hearts, speak now. Comment your truth. Share this. Because if the voice of a child can be weaponized, it must also be our shield. They had taken everything, footage, trust, even the silence of rescued children, and turned it into a weapon. But they had forgotten one thing: the truth does not die. It waits. 3 days after the fake video went viral, a small stage was prepared inside the shelter. Not grand. Not scripted. No flags. No spotlights. Just a wooden table. A few microphones. And 10 children. They wore clean shirts, some still oversized. Bandages on their arms. But their backs. Straight. Their eyes. Clear. President Traoré sat in the back of the room. Hands folded. Silent. He was not the speaker today. The first child to rise was Adama, 9 years old. Barefoot. I want to tell the truth, he said softly. We were scared. They gave us candy. They said if we said bad things, we could go to Europe. He looked down. Then up again. But President Traoré didn't hurt us. He saved us. A girl, Binta, followed. They lied to us. They told us he was sending us back to the mine. We believed them. But he gave us blankets. Shoes. My first book. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I was scared when I lied. But I'm not scared now. Cameras clicked. International journalists listened in silence. It wasn't just children speaking. It was truth resurrecting. When all had spoken, Traoré stood up and faced the press. I'm not here to defend myself. I don't need to. These children speak louder than any headline. He looked at the cameras, not with anger, but clarity. My wealth is not gold. My wealth is their future. The footage spread fast. This time, not on gossip sites, but on news channels, human rights forums, and government inboxes. A UN envoy called the testimony historic. Pediatricians from Belgium offered psychological aid. Schools in Senegal sent messages of solidarity. Hundreds of letters flooded in, from Brazil, Kenya, Indonesia, Germany. The tide turned. And that night, as Traoré returned to his office, a soldier approached him in the hallway. Mr. President, they're calling it Operation Truth. Traoré paused. Then smiled faintly. Good. Let's make sure it spreads faster than the lie. If the courage of a child speaking truth touches your heart, let it live beyond this video. Like, comment, and share this voice. Because history is not made by those who lie loudest. It's made by those brave enough to whisper the truth. It could have ended with headlines. It could have ended with applause. But it didn't. President Ibrahim Traoré knew that rescue without rebirth is just survival. So he built something more. Not a monument. Not a speech. A school. In the eastern hills of Burkina Faso, where the mine once devoured childhoods, bricks rose under morning sun. Windows opened to birdsong. Classrooms replaced cages. They called it the House of Light. And the first students. The 400. They wore uniforms, blue and white. They carried pencils, not picks. They studied math, history, and dignity. One child wrote an essay. Freedom is when someone hears your cry, and doesn't walk away. Traoré visits often. Not with guards, but with books. He reads. They listen. And the echoes of chains are replaced by chalk. Not every scar is gone. But every scar now lives beside a seed. And it is growing. If the House of Light shines in your heart, let it shine in the world. Like this story. Comment your hope. And subscribe to carry this flame forward. Because now, it is our turn to protect the children.